has started. And we are hopelessly outgunned.
Director Fury, I think it's time.
You here with the mission, sir? Trying to get me back in the world?
Trying to save it.
Doctor, we need you to come in.
What if I say no?
I'll persuade you.
What are you asking me to do?
It's called the Avengers Initiative.
I thought I didn't qualify. Apparently I'm, what is it, volatile, self-obsessed, and don't play well with others.
I think they need a timeout.
How desperate are you? Did you call on such lost creatures to defend you?
You have made me very desperate.
We're not a team. We're a time bomb.
This is nothing we were ever trained for.
Guys,
I'm bringing the party to you.
What's up, my ninjas? Strident here. And finally, I'm reviewing the Avengers. I saw an early screening of the show. Wow. This is one of those times where I had a feeling that Marvel was going to do this the right way, since it's kind of the first time that the US has had a proper kind of team that come from separate movies and they put them all together. You know, they do it sometimes with comedy, and they do it sometimes with like sci-fi TV series, but they don't usually do it with superheroes, especially not of late. And Marvel knocked this shit out of the park. I have to say, though, off the bat, there was like some apprehension that they wouldn't be able to pull this off. And just the simple fact that they were able to pull this off, it makes this a winner. You know what I mean? Because it's already been established that what DC has been doing for animation, as far as comics go, in animation, Marvel has been doing as far as comics to film. You know, with the exception of the Ang Lee Hulk, which they've already erased that stain, and with the exception of Spider-Man 3, which they're about to erase all that shit. You know, Marvel's been holding it down when it comes to the movies. And from a seasoned DC fan, I have to admit, you know, I like comics more than I like just one of the two sides. But my dial swings more to DC. But for this, it was amazing. It was everything you could ask for and more. And there were only a few small things, and it has to do with preference. But everything else was well done. So, the big thing is Joss Whedon was the director. And a lot of people, they have their misgivings. I love Joss Whedon. The only thing he's done that I didn't really like was Buffy and maybe Angel, but that whole universe minus Frey. I really love Frey. That was a cool book. But Firefly was one of my favorite shows ever. Serenity was an awesome movie. And it was all about the characters. Once again, he nailed it with all the characters. I mean, just about everyone feels like a fully realized character with nothing really lacking. Everybody played their position. The action parts were awesome. Everyone felt believable, and the comedy was on point, which is something he does really, really well. So it was kind of to be expected by Josh Whedon. It was well done. The story is pretty simple. If you've paid attention to the Marvel movies, you know that there's been a subplot which shows up at the end of every single Marvel movie, starting from Iron Man all the way to Captain America and Thor. Pretty much, there are the things that happen in those individual movies were kind of forcing the government to come up with an answer to these things, since individual heroes may one day not be enough to deal with the threat of whatever it is that's coming for us, at different given times. It caused them to come up with this idea for the Avengers initiative. But in the film, you find out that the initiative has been canceled for whatever reason. I guess because it didn't seem realistic, and plus, certain players, mainly Tony Stark, didn't really want to. They didn't feel that they fit the requirements of such a team, And being that Stark is the person who they've been trying really hard to have headline this thing, he definitely is not the leader type per se. So anyway, I don't know. Fast forward however many years, they find Captain America. Shit starts happening again. S.H.I.E.L.D. gets attacked. The Tesseract, which was the object that the Red Skull used in Captain America, falls into S.H.I.E.L.D. hands. They're like figuring out what to do with it and trying to, understand how the thing works. Loki shows up, ready to plot his revenge. Steals the Tesseract. Kidnaps Hawkeye and the scientist from Thor that was a friend of his that was, trying to study all that sort of stuff. And they're going to have them build something to help harness the power of the Tesseract, which realistically is just going to make it opens up a portal to another world so that Loki can use what's on the other side to help him conquer here. Now, this is going to be full of spoilers because I know the majority of you guys have been reading about this shit, and I know you're going to see it in a couple days, so I'm not going to hold back as much as I probably would if I knew that this was something that only had a very small audience. I know the majority of you guys have your favorites. I know there seems to be so many more Marvel fans these days that are younger that are going to be going to see this, so, I'm sorry if I'm spoiling stuff for you, but come on now, that's why you're here anyway. Anyway, Captain America, if you've seen the Captain America films, he's pretty much kind of dealing with the fact that he's way out of time. And when I say out of time, I mean he's no longer in his time. So he's trying to figure out his place. Nick Fury's pretty much stockpiling, gear and stuff for this fucked up situation that he is imagining will happen at some point soon. Bruce Banner is helping people all over the world. Iron Man is just building shit, coming up with more ways to help mankind through technology. I think he's coming up with a clean energy source based on the arc reactor, and he's using it to power Stark Tower first, and then he's going to probably sell it out to different companies and use it for the rest of the world. That's where I'm going to stop as far as your story goes, because I've just told you all the pieces of the puzzle. Essentially, Loki wants to use Stark Tower and its clean, limitless energy source in conjunction with the Tesseract to create, it's going to be the point of entry, for this, whatever's on the other side of the portal that they plan on opening. I hope that made sense. Anyway, pretty much you have all these things that happen. They catch Loki, Loki escapes. They kidnap this person, that person does things for Loki, and this person is mainly Hawkeye. Hawkeye, you saw glimpses of him before. If you saw Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, you got to see Jeremy Renner in action, and the dude seems to have a natural, affinity for physical roles like fighting and, you know, just things, physicality. I mean, the dude his movements are clean. I don't know if he used to be a dancer or something. I didn't do a whole bunch of research on him because I'm here to talk about the movie, not his whole career. But the dude is awesome. I've been looking forward to seeing him in other movies, but mainly Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, which is coming out, I think, next year. But dude is amazing. Like, he's good in other movies, and I think other movies showcase him a little bit more, but he's so on point here. My only gripe is that he looks like Ultimate Hawkeye, but he didn't have Ultimate Hawkeye's like background and attitude and stuff, you know? Ultimate Hawkeye is really suicidal. And he also is a marksman, so anything he uses, anything from knives to his fingernails to whatever, he can hit his target perfectly with no problems. Now, and because of the death of his family, he takes suicide missions because he hopes to die, but he's just too good to end up dying in the process. That's what I wanted to see with him, but instead we got a cool super soldier, or not super soldier, I'm sorry, super spy-ish, Jason Bourne-ish type character. And of course, you have the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who everyone falls in line. Maria Hill was awesome because, you know, and you never really see her in live action. We've seen her in video games, we see her in the comics, and she's, you know, at times she's a prick, and other times she's just really, really awesome soldier. But they did it. Colby Smulders, I think, is the actress's name from How I Met Your Mother. She's really good in this. Real simple role. It didn't require that much. She just had to be really clinical and follow directions really well because that's all that Nick Fury pretty much does. Agent Coulson is awesome, as usual, with his kind of dorky but on-point delivery. And then, of course, Nick Fury. I mean, he's all business, and it's Sam Jackson. I mean, I don't even have to go into his performance. Sam Jackson is Nick Fury. I just wish he yelled at somebody. It would have been awesome to see him yell at freaking Loki. But they were proper. They did their job. Now, the Hulk. A lot of people, and I was kind of part of this at first, and I thought about it, and I was just like, you know, whatever. There's been 3 actors now to play Hulk in film form in modern times. And, you know, I always wondered, why is it so difficult for them to just settle on one guy? You know, you just need a semi-awkward looking dude to play the Banner. And then you need a good, either a muscular dude that you use trick photography like in Lord of the Rings with the Hobbits and with Gandalf to make him bigger, or you just CG up the character and make him look like have the likeness of the actor. That's all you needed. But for some reason, it's like they just can't decide. And in my opinion, Edward Norton was the perfect choice. Perfect choice, but I guess he was too famous and probably would want too much control, and I think that was the issue. Whereas Mark Ruffalo is a little bit less famous, equally awkward in some of those situations, and believable as a scientist. You know, even though he's a comedian, that means he would understand the comedic timing necessary for some of the scenes, and, you know, the awkwardness necessary to be a good Banner. But overall, he took it and he did his thing. I mean, Hulk was pretty good in this. He was awesome. They didn't make him as 100% invincible as you've seen in other ones, which I like because you can beat the Hulk. I'm not going to sit here and play like Hulk is 100% invincible because that's bullshit. He's been beaten in so many ways. You just got to be smart about how you beat him. But in this, he felt like a complete character with weaknesses and strengths, and, you know, he had emotions, and, you know, he felt like a continuation of the version that Norton did. And to me, that's always a good thing because Edward Norton is an awesome actor, and he kind of put back some of the things that were needed for this character to feel real, you know? My homeboy Thor. Thor was a beast. Thor is a beast. Thor is my favorite Avenger, period. I don't care where he comes from. I don't care what the background issues are. To me, Thor has all the potential in the world for you to do all kinds of stories with him, and he's the magical aspect of the story, so it helps make... he brings that epic nature to the story. And in this, he throws down with the Hulk. He throws down with Iron Man. Both fights are pretty damn, you know, epic. I mean, there are aspects of it that I would say could use some help, but overall, Thor was amazing. You could almost go so far as to say that Chris Hemsworth is Thor. No one else needs to play that role. It needs to be him. In animation, in whatever, it needs to be him. Because from the speech to the basic little movements and nuances of the character, Hemsworth has it down. No one else needs to step into the role. Leave it for him. Good old Cap. I was at first, when they first, you know, before Captain America, the movie came out, the first Avenger, I was like, why Chris Evans? Why? He's already Johnny Storm, and that movie sucked. But when you think about it, he was the good part of that. Since Captain America was awesome, and he did his job in Captain America, and you felt him, and he feels like the real deal. It was so simple for him to step into this role and then feel like the real deal again. He pulls off the leadership role, the moral high ground thing. He is Captain America. Plain and simple. The physicality that was necessary, the flipping, the acrobatics, it was awesome. I wish there was more of that, which is one of my criticisms of the whole movie, but it was awesome. Cap did what he needed to do. There's a scene where he confronts some police officers and tells them what to do, and they question him, and he quickly shows them why you need to follow Captain America's directions. And Chris Evans was just awesome. He did everything right. Nothing to complain about. Now, a criticism and a plus is that the movie focuses on Tony Stark. Tony Stark it's like his show, so to speak. And I kind of have issues with that, but at the same time, the way they did it, it feels like, you know, he would know what's going on because he was the first person that was approached with this whole Avengers initiative. So, you know, he would be the man when it comes to all this stuff. Him and Cap kind of develop a little relationship, like a back and forth, kind of like, you think you're so badass because you got a suit, and what's his name? So you think you're so badass because you got all these chemicals in you that made you a super soldier. And it's kind of a back and forth kind of like ego bashing type thing that ends up turning into a mutual respect for what each of them brings to the table. And all across the board, that's kind of what happens. The Black Widow, she was another showstopper. You know, at first when I saw her little behind doing stuff, I was like, how is she really going to stand up to them? You know, because usually when the shit hits the fan, she's in the shadows doing other stuff because she's a spy, essentially. But, I mean, this version, she was all over the place. She was jumping around, being thrown, flipping, freaking choking out the bad guys. She was popping people in the head. She was doing all kinds of stuff that someone of her caliber in this situation would have to do, and it made it feel a little bit more, I don't know, it was believable, I guess, is what I'm going for. You didn't doubt her prowess when she was in the middle of battle. And that was a good thing. It was awesome. It was nice to see that someone thought about how she would fare against such things and if this would make the movie believable. You know what I'm saying? This would make her character not feel out of place with everything else that was going on. Scarlett Johansson kind of owns this role. Although there are a couple people who I could see playing this over her, mainly an actress like Olga Kurylenko or even Mila Jovovich. But Scarlett Johansson did it. The thing I kind of miss, and I guess, you know, this is just me because I've been reading comics with, you know, the Black Widow in them for a long time. I miss the accent, you know, even the video games, every version of her usually has the accent. And it was kind of cool, I guess, for her to change it, being that, you know, she doesn't consider herself Russian anymore, even though she's obviously of Russian heritage. But, you know, it's all right. But overall, every character was represented properly. And it didn't feel like egos were in the way because you have an ensemble cast built up of actors who, even though many of them in their own right could have been the headliner, they all were humble enough and they all are, how do you put it? They're all, I don't want to say mainstream enough, but they're all kind of like, they're like semi-A-list. You know what I mean? Semi-A-list enough. Or I guess they're just humble enough that no one was like, I want to take this show and I want it to be all about me. Which, I wish there was more of this going on in Hollywood. We'd get more good shit, you know? It's just that simple. And I don't mean that in a bad way when I say semi-A-list. I just mean that usually A-list actors have a certain arrogance about them, and it's all about whose name appears first on the marquee or on the opening credits or whatever, and you know, who gets top billing, who gets paid for the most, and you know, whose show is this really? And it seemed like this was more of a joint effort. And in all the interviews and everything you read, and you know, mostly I read, I don't watch as many interviews. I only watch the behind the scenes stuff when the movies actually are released, you know, on DVD. But it seems like they knew how important this is to comic book films, and they all went for it, and it shows. Now, I've already told you about the story. The tone of the film was awesome. It was dark in places, but it was like a mid-ground. You know, it wasn't too dark, it wasn't too lighthearted, and you definitely felt the urgency of stopping Loki, because you know, Loki, no matter how confused he is about his family situation, which I meant to say Tom Hiddleston does an insane job as Loki, in the sense that you feel everything he feels. You understand his points, you know. There's a scene where he yells at a huge group of people to kneel. And they kneel too, because they're like, oh shit, I better do what he says. And then he tells them, he gives this speech about how mankind, that's easy. It's easy for them to do this because they were created to be ruled. And you think about it from the perspective of this crazy-ass villain, and it's like, I guess, you know, I could see how he could think that, because he's so far above the average human being. There's no way he would understand, or no way a human being, a regular human being, would be like, dude, I'm not going to do it. And then the first person who tries to stand up, he tries to kill him on the spot, and is like, you know, he's going to be an example. And it's awesome to see that. And then when he talks to Thor, and Thor's trying to get him to stop this, and he keeps on using the common sense that he now has after going through all that he went through in the first, you know, in Thor. You totally see Loki thinking about this stuff, and then he realizes, no, I'm pissed off, so I can't use common sense. I'm going to try to kill you anyway, because I've already started. And, you know, I don't know, Hiddleston's he's an awesome actor. Pretty diverse as far as his emotional range, and you believe it, which is weird for a movie where it's about 6 guys trying to beat up one guy with an army, and you know, there's a lot of explosions and hitting and punching and jumping and flipping and gunfire and blah blah blah, and then you have these guys with really, everyone in here has a very decent emotional range, and it's pretty awesome. About the simplest, I guess the SHIELD people are the people with the least emotional range, next to with the exception of the Black Widow, because she turns it on and off like it's nothing. But anyway, the tone is perfect. The look of the movie. At first I had questions and kind of had issues with Cap's costume, because I thought it was too like Batman Begins and not Captain America enough. But then the more I look at it, there are fabrics instead of rubber on parts of his suit, you know? And like you kind of get a feel that they were trying to go for an updated look that stems from tights. No one in the movie is wearing tights. The closest to tights that you get is the leather on Natasha, or the Black Widow. And maybe even on Thor. He's got some leatherish looking pants too. But overall, their suits it's like form-fitting materials that it doesn't seem like tights. You know what I mean? Not traditional tights, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And everything fits, you know. Iron Man's suit, even though it's like a couple steps up from, I think the Mark 7 is what he's using in this one. It's a couple steps up from the Mark 6. And you see like a little bit more bulk. It's still pretty much what you saw before. Thor, same thing. Different boots, different pants, a different kind of simplified chest piece, but the gauntlets, everything else, the way his cape worked was the same. I wish that they actually showed the cape grow out of because because in the movie, in Thor, you see people's capes shrink up and the material is on the tips of their shoulder pads or something, or around their neck. I would have liked to have seen the armor, or I'm sorry, the cape actually grow and show up as a cape, and see the individual pieces of armor, the mail that you see on his arms, it like flies onto him and it armors up over his, like a sleeve. So you got kind of a mix between Ultimate Thor and Classic Thor, and but they just didn't show that transition. They show Loki's transition from, you know, his walking around costume to his armor with his helmet and everything, but Thor never wears the helmet, and you never actually see the transition from, you know, sleeveless to armor. But overall, still, the armors, the suits, everything looked right. The tech, freaking Hawkeye's tech looked right. I like the fact that he had a quiver that it puts on the, it's like he had several arrows with, or headless arrows, or tipless arrows, whatever. And his quiver had a rotating, kind of like a chamber underneath it with all the different heads on it, or tips. And he would hit a button, it would spin, it would give him the tip that he wanted that corresponded to whatever the button was that he pressed. That's kind of awesome because, you know, when you think about it, it's a lot of arrows to have in there that are just sitting in a quiver, you know, and it's not like he has the kind that Green Arrow has. Green Arrow is a showboating kind of archer. I mean, he's awesome at it. He's probably the best archer in comics, but he's a showboat. Whereas Hawkeye is doing this from a very systematic angle. He's trying to make sure that he gets what he needs to get done without any play. They took all the showboating out of Hawkeye's character and made him more of a, you know, business as usual type character, you know? The action in the movie. Now, the action was good. It was very simple action. You know, a punch was a punch, a kick was a kick, explosions, gunshots. But this is the problem that I have with many of Marvel's films, including Thor, including Captain America, the first Avenger. They're not... We all saw The Matrix. And the level of action, even if you take the kung fu out of it, the level of action in that series was on another level. And those characters weren't exactly superheroes. They were doing superheroic things based on the situation. By now, the slow-mo, the bullet time, all those effects that would come from that need to be in superhero films. They tried, and I admire this because it's a double-edged sword. A lot of films use too much CG for things that are, you know, humanly possible. And in some films, don't use the right effects for the right situations. This, mostly everything was realistically done. And my gripe with that is that it's fantasy. This was pure fantasy. So we should have had a couple scenes where, you know, Natasha's doing flips through gunfire from these crazy lasers, because if anyone can do it, it's her. Or Captain America. Instead of just doing parkour, I'm sorry, he should have been doing crazy gymnastic stuff because he's a super soldier. He's not just a soldier who knows parkour. I can do what he was doing. Many of you watching this that are more physical and that do martial arts or do gymnastics, you could do some of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was nothing that, like, physically, there wasn't that much that put them above the average person. Like Cap, Natasha, and Clint, or, I'm sorry, Cap, Black Widow, and Hawkeye all did similar levels of things, except Cap had his shield, so he broke stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, he cut the arm and the gun off of one of those Chitaris, and, you know, he did it almost with ease, you know, whereas the other two were more weapon-based from firearms or long-range weapons, so you never really saw them do too much close-up unless the situation called for it. I wanted to see more John Woo style jumping, double gunning in the air, you know, stranglehold, Max Payne. That's what Natasha needed to be thrown in there. Captain America needed to be able to do the defensive flips and running on walls and shit like what the Trickster mode or Trickster style in Devil May Cry 2. We need to see Cap doing shit like that all day, every day. Backflips to dodge explosions. And he was getting tired, which didn't make sense because Cap can't get tired. I mean, it would really take a lot for him to get tired. So those were areas where I was kind of like, you know, get an action choreographer. That's what you guys need. And if you do that, the Marvel movies will be perfect. Iron Man, he was pretty on point, but I like when they come up with more imaginative ways of team working together. Like there's a scene where Iron Man flies in. He's kind of air support for this fight in the end, which is pretty, it's a nice fight, don't get me wrong. He's shooting down all these bad guys, and then he flies over to where Captain America and Black Widow are fighting a bunch of the, you know, the bad guys. He flies down, he shoots a couple with his repulsors, you know, one to the left, one to the right. One, he spins and shoots somebody, then he shoots at Cap and concentrates it. Cap blocks it with his shield and then directs it towards the other guys that are kind of coming from off screen. You're like, oh shit, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. It makes sense, you know what I'm saying? These are things that should be done more. That's the kind of shit that would blow your fans away more than the fact that we just had all these guys on screen. But that's my personal opinion. When I do this shit one day, I'm gonna make you shit in your pants when you see how well, if I was the person helming this, when you see how well you get all these things to work together, I'm gonna make the audience shit on themselves. You know what I mean? That's how crazy it needs to be. You know, when I saw Matrix Reloaded, the action in that movie had me, I mean, I was laughing so hard because I couldn't believe that they finally did it. And now we have an excuse for it, and they're still holding back. So, I don't know. It might be a directorial thing because Joss Whedon is pretty, you know, he's semi-realistic with some of the stuff that he lets happen, and he tries to keep everything grounded in reality. But when you have a demigod on your team, what's reality? You know what I'm saying? So that's my gripe. The effects, awesome. Nothing felt out of place. The one overall thing about the effects was I think that things could have been pushed a little bit further. But considering how expensive these kind of movies are, and considering what we were dealing with, and it was kind of the early stages of that big invasion, I won't be too hard on that. It was still good. Overall, this movie is worth it. Go see it when it comes out on Friday. See it again Saturday. Just go see it. It's worth it. This is an example of what the Avengers are supposed to be like. This kicks the shit out of that stupid cartoon that's on right now. It's good enough that your parents, if you're a youngin', parents could go. If you're a parent, you could bring your kids to see it, and there's enough crazy action and cool stuff going on that your kids will be occupied, and as an adult you'll understand everything that people are talking about and you won't feel left out. And it stands alone. You don't have to have seen the other movies to understand where all this stuff comes from, because they give you flashbacks and little tidbits of information as the story goes along. So go see this movie. You know what I mean? If I had a seal of approval, I'd put it on this movie. If I on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10. They got it right, you know? Like I said, the gripes I have they're all preferential. It's based on my preference, you know, because when you read comics, things are amped up to a certain level, and it's supposed to be fantastical. I think we're getting back to that because we've got so many of these superhero movies coming on, and the situation to keep upping the stakes, you know? And I think they should push it a little bit further. But what they did in this is pretty nice. And it's a fun romp. You're gonna enjoy yourself from start to finish. Even the comedy in this it's hilarious. People's timing they're just perfect. I can't really say too much else about, you know, the tone of the film. So check it out. You're gonna enjoy it, and that's pretty much all I've got to say. So thanks for staying with me for this long ass review, because I'm just gushing with shit to say. And stay tuned for all the good shit that I got coming, alright? Peace outside, everybody.